Let's talk about taking notes accurately. I know it's boring and gets old, but you got to keep yourself organized so you know what's going on with your breeding programs, your feeding, and your collection in general. What's going on, everybody? It's Adam at Proper Royals. Thank you for joining me today. If we haven't met before, this channel is all about my family's journey from ball python hobbyist to a ball python business. Links to all our socials below, Morph Market Store, and our collection of NFTs. Those of y'all that are regulars here, I apologize. I'm not going to be my usual bouncing around self today. I managed to get a breakthrough case of COVID. I am working my way through it. I'm doing all right. 3 shots, 3 doses of Pfizer, and I still managed to catch a breakthrough. So stay vigilant, protect yourselves out there. I'm gonna be just fine. I'm just working my way through. So I'll be sitting in the chair today rather than bouncing around in my snake room. So forgive me if I'm a little out of it or we move a little slower today. I thought from the desk would be a good time to talk about the note-taking, boring, organizational parts of our hobby and what we can do to help ourselves on that. If you think about it, keeping track of what you fed, when an animal is due to be fed, what breeding pairings you made, and then what animals are coming out of those eggs as you breed them and as you get your great results, really can be overwhelming. I'll tell you, for my own self, over the past nearly 2 years now, as my collection has gone from just a handful of snakes to right now, including some of the hatchlings I still have available left to sell, I've got about 30 animals that I'm keeping track of, and what I used to be able to do up here, then I progressed to just some handwritten notes and that kind of thing, has now turned into spreadsheets that I have to keep, and I have to keep those to keep myself organized, but also for good business practice. I mean, you have to know, the more you can back up and provide provenance to what condition your animals are in, what they're eating, is all a benefit to your potential customers and your future customers. So I like to include all that stuff when I sell an animal. I always do, and I see that as an added value of buying from me, but also just for myself, keeping things organized, I have to do it. So I thought today I'd take you through the progression of kind of where I came from to where I am, and it's nothing proprietary, it's just an organizational, so simple spreadsheets. The other thing too is I'm happy to share them. If you want to drop me an email at properroyals@gmail.com, be happy to share these with you. You're going to have to edit them yourselves, but like I say, I'll walk you through what they are today, and I'll show you clearer shots than just the beat up old clipboards here. I'll show you the screenshots on the computer screen. Before we get to the spreadsheets, on my tubs themselves, one thing I've enjoyed using or found beneficial, I use these little cards that just say their name, their date of birth, male, female, and their genes. And I label each tub that way. And it's just an index card in a little plastic sleeve, and I actually use this little ticky-tack stuff that we used in elementary school. I found it on Amazon, and I just stick it on the back and I stick it on the tub. And I actually used to use a label maker, and I found that the labels were a pain to take off, and I have PVC racks, so I can't use the magnetic strips that I like seeing on the ARS racks and whatnot. So I actually find this to be very convenient for switching tubs, labeling them, if I need to move a tub on the rack space, if I find a new way to organize. And for when I clean the tubs as well, I just pull it off, clean, stick it back on there. So that's kind of one of my hacks that I use on there. I don't know if that makes sense for you to use in your everyday life, but there you go if it does. The 2 spreadsheets that I use are for feeding and for breeding. I'll tell you where I came from. When I first started, I would make these paper sheets for each animal. So you could see it's my hand-drawn, chicken scratch, but it was male, female, parents pairing, weight when I acquired it, who I acquired it from, and then I actually would keep all the feeding history of that animal like a book. And I have that on most of my animals because I really just recently went away with that. I found, by the time I was keeping track of 30 animals that way, that was just crazy town, So what I did was I consolidated it all into this spreadsheet here. And that spreadsheet is nothing crazy. None of these spreadsheets are. There's no formulas or macros or anything going on in these spreadsheets. Just an organizational way that I can look at the whole collection by month, and it becomes far more feasible on one sheet than digging through 30 of those individual animal sheets. And I'm happy and proud that I kept those notes. I have those for any animals that I do ever sell in the future. But what I'll do in the future is just pull out the information from these spreadsheets that I can do with some quick cut and paste commands on Excel, print it out for the customer, and off it goes. So for the feeding one, on the left-hand column here, I have the snakes by their names. Some of them I haven't named, so I still have their clutch, hatch, individual numbers, and so my numbering system goes the number of the clutch, then the year it was in, then the number of the snake out of it. So 221-2 is the second clutch of 2021 and the second snake in that clutch. For each date, I have one column of, and I tend to feed on Sunday nights, and almost all of my snakes, outside of just the super young hatchlings, are on a 1, 2, or 3 week rotation. So I just keep everything on a weekly basis, and then from my handwritten notes, if they're on a break that week, I just put a B in there for a break, and it's a sort of a built-in consolidated notes. From there, it's pretty simple. I just have a column under each date for a rodent, and did they take it, yes or no? And you can see from the picture, there's always some extra notes. So like if it's the first time that a hatchling has taken a frozen thawed, I'll make note of that it's gone from live to frozen thawed. If they struck the frozen thawed versus where I used to just lay it in there for them, that's a progress as well. So I'll make a note of that. At that point, then it's just kind of getting to know your animals. I know some of my females are building, so they might normally have been on a 3 week rotation with medium rats. I might move them up to once every other week, or if I had leftover smalls that I had to use up rather than wasting, I'll make a note of that. So anyhow, it's all there consolidated. It makes it much easier to pull my rodents as well. So I feed frozen thawed, so all my rodents are frozen. In my freezer, I have a stock there frozen. Man, when I was using my old sheets here, trying to memorize and make cards or make pull thaw sheets of what I was going to pull to thaw out and feed the next day, that was a real hassle as well. That all is all contained right on here. I can label what rodents I want to pull, and then I put a consolidated number at the bottom. It really adds to the efficiency of my operation as well. So I'm getting more accurate notes, and I'm getting a higher level of efficiency so that I have time to, live my life and not just be totally consumed by this hobby business as it is for us right now. So that's the feeding spreadsheet. The other spreadsheet is my breeding spreadsheet, and that one, that history is even more convoluted. I'll tell you, I really enjoy the manual process of pencil to paper. I'm a nut about it that way. I like analog engagement. It dials me in better. It's the feel, the touch of the paper. Maybe it's a musical thing from actually feeling and playing an instrument. I made a video about this before too, but I actually map out all the different breeding combinations of the females and males that I have, and I make kind of a matrix by hand, which is just a fun, goofy, nerdy thing to do. I probably will have too many animals to do that in the future with, to tell you the truth. But that's actually how I come up with my breeding plans. And then what I would do in the past was kind of make my own little spreadsheet by hand here of the female to the male that I wanted to have, and I would map it out that way. And that was cool and useful. And then I was keeping handwritten notes of what pairings I made when, frankly, at some point you got to look yourself in the mirror and go, what are you doing all of this goofy handwritten work for? What are you trying to prove here? And my answer really was, I'm trying to keep track of what I'm doing. And that is the right answer, but I was going about it the wrong way. Because if the answer is really that you're trying to keep track of what you're doing, an organized, clean spreadsheet like this is always far more superior to this willy-nilly planning. Or lack of planning with, handwritten notes. And to be honest, what I find is, unless you set aside time to make these processes and systems, you end up starting to wing it, and you make these notes and you're like, man, I'll make the handwritten notes and I'll transfer them over later. And then weeks go by and you realize you haven't, and you realize you're starting to lose control of what you're doing. And I don't mean that with snakes, I mean that with any business in general. If you don't keep up on your accounting in any business, that happens. How many times have we stuck receipts in our pockets and been like, I'll get to that, and then tax time comes around and you're like, man, I didn't get to any of that. And we could have been better about it. So this is about building good habits and being better about it. It's vitally important when it comes to breeding, though. In this world of recessives and hets and possible hets, it's one thing to lose track of the visuals, but maybe you can retract that by just seeing the results. It's pretty easy to see if Enchi's in there or not in there. You're never going to know and remember off the top of your head. I'm only talking about having 8 breeding females this year, and I can tell you I will never remember all the information on these spreadsheets here, even just basic pairings. But then imagine, next year I'll have 12 to 15, and in 2 seasons, just with the setup I have, if I don't expand, I will absolutely have 18 breeding females. And we all know how this goes. It starts and it just keeps going and going. It's completely possible I'll have much more than that. And that's where you got to keep yourself organized and keep your operational efficiencies in order and organized and knowing what the heck you're doing. So this spreadsheet, you can see on the left here, I have my breeding females. The top areas here are just a copy of the lower area here. It's repeated. So when you run out of space on this top copy, it's basically just a second page down here. It's identical. So on the left, I have the name of my females. I name them all. I enjoy being around these animals. They kind of helps me keep up with their personality as well. Some are more aggressive than others. Some feed better than others. Some like hides. Some don't like hides. And I get to know them a little bit that way. But I have their names and then their genes. And then I took the information from my handwritten planning, which I enjoy so much, and I put it into digital form. And so you can see here the names of the males that I've assigned a pair with them. And you'll see here I put P1, P2, and P3. Those are old restaurant terms. On your daily prep sheets in a restaurant, you got a P1 as a first priority, P2 second, P3, and I suspect that's in a lot of industries, but that's a lingo that I'm using, and I like it because it can be pairing 1, pairing 2, and pairing 3 as well. So my first priority of pairings is listed right here in this P1 column. And then my second priority pairing is in the P2 column. And you'll see some of those are left blank, which means I'm only going to pair them with one snake. I'm letting all my chips roll on pairing it with that one male. Just 2 of them have a third pairing backup as well. And those are for various reasons. You'll have your own pairing reasons as well. And then over here is where the actual pairings notes take place. I put the male that it's paired with, the date, did I get a visual lock or not. Now we should know, if you don't know, it's good education, you should know that just because you don't see a lock doesn't mean a lock didn't happen. So anytime you pair 2 animals together, you need to assume that they locked or that they're going to lock. So if you put them together, you're in it with that animal, okay? You're in it with that pairing, and that could be a potential outcome of the eggs, whether it's the whole clutch or a partial clutch or none at all, because of course they might not go, which Mother Nature certainly plays a hand in. There's no guarantees that just because you put them together, but there's certainly no guarantee that just because you didn't see them locked doesn't mean that they did, okay? So then I keep the dates and I keep whether they locked in there, and I have that in nice, neat, tidy digital form. I can copy and paste that for as many pairings as needed right through breeding season, and I'll have all my notes at my fingertips. If you'd like to use any of these, like I say, shoot me an email, properroyals@gmail.com. Otherwise, thank you for watching. Keep it right here. I'll share all of my work. I love doing that. I'll share our journey. I will see you next time when I'm feeling a little bit better, back to my usual self. Until then, thank you so much. See ya.